Welcome to another Straight Up Tuesday tip. I'm 𝗤𝗁𝗁𝗁. With me as always is 𝗬𝘃𝗶𝗵𝘁. And with us again is Sharad Mehta. For those of you who didn't listen in last time, please go back to episode 93. Sharad did a fantastic job talking about automation and processes to scale your business. And we have him back today. For those of you who have not heard the previous episode, Sharad is an investor who has done hundreds of deals, all while being remote in his home in Canada. He's also the owner of 𝗬𝘃𝗶𝗵𝘁. 𝗬𝘃𝗶𝗵𝘁 is a cloud-based system that helps you automate your task and helps investors manage their business more efficiently. And last time we had him talk about automation, but now we're going to focus on direct mail. For those who don't know, Sharad has done almost up to 1 million mailers have been sent out from him and his company. So very well versed in this subject, been doing it for multiple years, proven success. I know a lot of our listeners want to get direct with homeowners, direct with other investors looking to sell their multifamily properties. This is a great episode to talk about, all right, how do we actually get started in there? So Sharad, that was a long intro, but welcome back to the show.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
We are pumped. This is one we've been waiting for. So Sharad, I guess awesome. We're going to walk through the direct mail process from start to finish. Can we start with just where are you pulling information from? I want to get started. This is what I want to do. Walk me through step 1 through step X. And let's begin with, where do I find the information? How do I get that into an organized fashion so I can actually start sending out mailers?
Absolutely. I would take it actually a step back. And before you start direct mail or any other marketing, as an investor, I would look at, can I commit to this marketing for at least 6 months? If you cannot, whether it's direct mail, cold calling, whatever that might be, PPC, if you cannot, then I would not do it. Any marketing is going to be waste of time and effort at that point for the most part. So first question would be, what's your budget? Let's say for $10,000, right? You want to stretch it over 6 months. So if totally you want to invest is $10,000, don't spend $10,000 on first campaign, stretch it over 6 months. If you cannot do it for 6 months, then don't do direct mail. So I just want to put that out there because we do direct mail for a lot of investors. I've done close to 1 million, but between other people that we do direct mail for through 𝗬𝘃𝗶𝗵𝗁, we've done like 3 to 4 million pieces of direct mail. That's the number one reason we notice why people say direct mail doesn't work. They send one mailer out and they say, oh, I don't get a deal. It doesn't work. So before you pull a list, the first thing you have to do is you have to figure out the target area. Okay. So whatever market you're in, let's say you're in Illinois, you have to figure out, okay, do you want to target it by county? Do you want to target your marketing by city or zip code, right? So especially if you're starting out new, be as specific as possible. Be very targeted with your marketing. So let's say you pick a zip code of, I used to live in South Loop, so I'm just going to put 60605. I think that was the zip code. So let's say you pick that zip code. Then after that, the next thing is once you figured out the zip code that you want to target or the city, then the next thing you want to do is, okay, who do I target, right? So there's one simple way that a lot of investors start out with is buying their list on ListSource or PropStream. So you could go to ListSource, you could buy your list, you could put in your criteria. So the first criteria they would ask you for is the location, the area. So let's say you have your city or zip code that you picked out. The next thing would be, are you buying, do you want to target homeowners or absentee? So the difference between homeowners and absentee, essentially, when you're pulling a list is if the mailing address where the tax bill goes is the same as the actual property address, then it's homeowner. If the mailing address where the tax bill goes is different from the property address, then it's considered an absentee. So for example,
what would be the advantage of targeting absentee?
The advantage of targeting absentee would be absentee owners generally tend to be more motivated than homeowners because they might own multiple properties. They might be investors that got into investing. They bought a property. Now, for some reason or the other, it's not working out. They're tired. Their tenant isn't paying rent. So there's all these motivation factors that come in. So generally, we notice absentee list tends to be better than homeowners because homeowners have equity in the property, they're living in that home, so they don't have as much motivation to sell the house versus as compared to an absentee. So once you figure that out, then the next thing you want to look at it is how much equity they should have. So equity is also important because you don't want to target somebody with a direct mail that just that doesn't have any equity in the property. So let's say if somebody wants to sell a property to you for $100,000, but the house is worth $100,000, then there's no money to be made. So you want to make sure they at least have 30% equity in the property for it to make sense for you as an investor. So you want to make sure it's equity. And then after that, you want to look at it, how long they've owned the property. Minimum that you want to try for is 5 years. Because typically what we notice is a property owner has had some life event in a 5-year period where, they may have some motivation to sell the property. So if you do not pick that length of ownership, then what could happen is, let's say you target people that have 100% equity in the property, right? They bought their property, they paid cash for it, but they just bought it 6 months ago. There's very little chance that they would want to sell their property because they just bought it 6 months ago, even though they have 100% equity. So you want to look at equity in combination with how long they've owned property for. Now there's some other advanced filters in there where you can do unknown equity and you can do unknown years of ownership. I would say that's a little bit more advanced. So I would start out with 30% equity and a minimum years of ownership of 5 years. If you're starting out, I would go with absentee over homeowners. And then you can get a little bit more specific. You can look at absentee homeowners that live out of state. So if you're targeting people in Chicago, then you can choose that. Does the homeowner, the actual owner of the property, does he live in Illinois or does he live out of state? So everything else being equal, I think somebody who lives out of state may have a little bit more motivation to sell the property because they cannot keep eyes on the property. So that's how you would build a list if you were using something like ListSource. Other people use PropStream. So that's one way. The other way is to go down.
Quick, Sharad, just real for someone who hasn't used those properties, used those services before, I can just go on ListSource and I can just go through and say, I want this type of property, this type of owner, and it'll spit out, 200 leads, 2,000 leads, whatever for my criteria. Exactly. And I can just keep adjusting as appropriate. And then what information does ListSource provide me?
So ListSource would provide you the property address, of course. It would provide you the owner's name. It would provide you, depending on what filters you choose, it would provide you the equity in the property, the last sale date. And there's some other information that you can get for free. So once you get to the option of actually paying for it, there's an option for additional fields. And then if you open that drop down, there's a whole bunch of them that are absolutely free of charge that you don't have to pay per record. So I would highly recommend that you actually select those. I think bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, there's like a bunch of them that are free of charge. So the more data you have, the better you can get with your direct mail. Again, it's free. You don't have to pay for it. The actual list you have to, but there's some additional columns that you can get in the list that you don't have to pay for. Right. Again, if somebody who's starting out, I don't want to plug recently, but that's something we can help out with. Somebody who's starting out, to help them buy the list. And we have an account with ListSource where we can help them get the list a lot cheaper versus if they were to go buy directly from ListSource. Okay.
And if there's someone who's just starting, they have a list, great, I have this Excel file. I'm assuming then you just export that into, a system like yours or into some other CRM. But if I'm just getting started, is it okay to just run it off that Excel list for like my first mailer? Or would you advise against
absolutely. That? If you're starting out, again, for somebody to start using a system, they have to know what their pain points are. There's a bunch of systems out there. It's always a good idea to have a process in place that you can scale on. But, most of the people that are starting out, it's not like you send out 1,000 pieces of direct mail. You're not going to get 1,000 calls. Typically, what we notice is you'll get about 0.5% of people that will call you back. So, on a list of 1,000 people, like 10% would be your 100 people. So imagine, if you have 0.1 or 1% of the people calling you, that's like 5 to 10 people actually calling you back on that campaign.
Got it.
And majority of those calls are going to be people saying, hey, I'm not interested. How did you get my information? Take me off the list, which is okay. Again, in the previous episode that we talked about, if people don't just see an ad and just run, to buy that product, it's just about being consistent with your marketing, reaching to the same owner over and over again, just letting them know that you're in the market to buy their property.
Got it. Awesome info, Sharad. Can you talk us through now? You referenced there is also another way to accumulate leads to eventually send mailers out. Walk us through that path.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways. One, we talked about buying your list from list source, for example. Right? The other way is once you know the area you want to target, then you can generally go to your county and just ask them for example, list of properties that are delinquent on taxes. So that's always a good list, because if people aren't paying their property taxes, then there's a very likely chance that they may be interested in selling their property at a number that works for both you and them. So that's one way. And what we notice in our market in Lake County, Indiana, they put out a list once a year of people that are behind on their taxes. So you can it's public information, you can get that. The other is you can go to your local utility department and ask them for people that are behind on their water bill, people that haven't paid their water bill. So the chances are, if they haven't paid their water bill, they're behind on other information also. So that's another way to get that, list of motivated owners. And then you can also go down to your local building department and ask them people that have received a violation for code enforcement. Again, people, that have run into the code enforcement issues or received stop work orders. So those are other lists that you can pull. But having said that, you have to be careful. So you might have somebody that hasn't paid their water bill, that hasn't paid their tax bill, that has received a code violation, that has a stop work order. So it checks all the boxes. But if they do not have equity, then it doesn't really matter unless you're doing short sales. So you have to be careful with that. You could get some really specialized list, but it's always good. Like for what we do, we always have a master list of people that have equity in their properties. So let's say in our area, we might put a list of 50,000 people. These are all the people that have equity in their properties and have owned the property for 5 years. So we might not target all 50,000 people. So we have that as our comparison list. Then we'll go out and let's say we get a list of code enforcement. Let's say we get a list of 1,000 people that have code enforcement violation. So we'll compare that list of 1,000 people against our 50,000 people that have equity. So if we notice that out of those 1,000 people, only 200 actually have equity in the property, so then we're only going to target those 200 people and not the other 800 people that actually don't have equity in the property. So for us, they have to have equity in the property before we target. We don't do short sale, but somebody might want to do short sale with that. So but that's up to you, but it gets very tricky, very long drawn out process. So equity for us, they have to have equity before we move forward.
Yeah, 100%. Otherwise, you're wasting your money, you're wasting your time, you're getting your hopes up. Like the
Right.
more targeted you can be from the get-go, the better your campaigns will run.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then also once you have that list, then in a system like 𝗓𝘵𝗔, what you can do is you take that list, let's say you have a list, you upload it in 𝗓𝘵𝗔, and then we can actually tell you which of these properties are vacant based on USPS information. So if USPS isn't able to deliver mail to that address, then they flag it as vacant. So we have that information. So we'll scrub those properties for you and tell you which ones are vacant. So again, if you're starting out and then the more motivation factors you can have, like equity is one motivation factor, the years of ownership is another. Now vacancy is another motivation factor. Then if they have, they're behind on their water bill, they're behind on their tax delinquent, they're behind on their taxes, they've received a code violation. Like these are multiple motivation factors that a homeowner will have. Then, if everything else being equal, if you have somebody that has all these motivation factors versus somebody that has equity in the property, has lived there for 10 years, but nothing else, they're not behind on anything, then you want to target somebody that's behind on their bills. So that's how you get more and more targeted with your marketing.
Sharad, that's great stuff. So I know originally we said we were going to walk through the entire steps here, but we're cut on time. So I think there's a good stopping point. We'll have you back on for the next tip to talk through. All right, now that you have this list, what do we actually do with it? But I didn't want to rush you there, because that was a great 15 minutes on just how to actually put together the list to set yourself up for success. Mark, any comments before we wrap here?
No, let's wrap. I'm excited to hear more in 2 weeks here.
All right. So you guys get an extra Chicago fact out of this, that means.
Yes.
So we're talking about mailing here, right? So Mark, I'm going to give you a question on the old main post office. So I know now we have Uber there. I think Pepsi moved in. At its original completion was the largest in the world. Which I could have guessed, but I didn't know that for sure. It reached its maximum capacity in 1943, handling this many letters per month. It's multiple choice, and I'm giving you orders of magnitude here. So they handled this many letters per month at their peak operating. Is it A, 4 million, B, 93 million, C, 580 million, or D, 1.2 billion?
We're going with 580 million.
All right, Sharad, do you want to guess as well?
Oh man, you know what? I'm just gonna go I'm gonna say over $1 billion.
Mark, you got this one. 580 million. Nice work.
Nice.
In fourth grade, I had to do I had to create a diagram of it, or like a real 3D image of it. And I did a whole bunch of research on it. But I'll tell you this, the thing I love about that building is you get to drive through it. Like, I don't care.
Yeah,
I'm
awesome.
40 years old and I still driving under it or through it, whatever it might be. That's still the coolest thing to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sharad, thanks so much. This has been awesome.
Absolutely.
Mark, take us out here. Guys, we will have Sharad back on to finish this conversation of now what do we do with these leads now that we have them, set up and scrubbed.
Yes, checking out our website. We have the zoning cheat sheet. Make sure you download that. It's awesome information. You might not need it now, but save it to your desktop and have it for later. Information that 15 years into this, I didn't know. So you'll definitely learn something. And then coming soon, we're going to have some off-market resources on the website as well, too. So stay tuned and we'll let you know more about that. All right, Tom, thank you. Sharad, thank you as always, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.